right, hello wine-drinking people. Time for more of what I've had to drink yesterday, and we're always happy to see our friends from Vinifera, one of my favorite Italian importers and distributors. And these guys, we've had a relationship with them for many, many years, do a lot of business with them. They bring their product in correctly, they warehouse it correctly, they deliver it correctly, and they're the only people in the business that has older vintage wines that have been properly handled. And they deserve a little bit of an upcharge. They do raise the price on these wines every year. They got to pay rent for sitting in the warehouse, but like I said, as long as I know they've been stored properly, we're happy to pay it, knowing that we get product that is in great shape. And not a lot of old Brigaldara wine sitting around in the warehouse at Vinifera, though. Let me tell you, this is a small producer, family-run estate. Stefano Cesare, one of the nicest people you will meet, and his son was in to see us, and looks like a clone of his father, man. I'll tell you what, and it's good to see the next generation getting involved actively with sales. I said, you're harvesting right now. How come you're not back at the winery? He goes, Dad is back there, making all the important decisions. And, the most important thing is getting out there on the street and selling the product. Even if you make the greatest wine in the world, if you do not get out there and tell the story, to me, you're not going to be as successful. And these guys have got a great story and a great product. They have 50 hectares of vines. Everything's estate bottled. They only do 300,000 cases total production, and of course family owned and operated. And Amarone has grown from 7 million to 17 million bottles produced in the last 10 years. So you're starting to see some stuff out there that is lower quality. And even though the Amarone has been raised to a DOCG, you want to look for great small properties like this one. And this is the best value we have in the store for an entry-level Amarone. It's still in the $50 price range, so an incredible value. The Valpolicella, talk about values. This is a classic Valpolicella, very light, very easy drinking. The bouquet on this, fresh-cut flowers, tart red cherries, and just really light and inoffensive, easy to drink, slightly chilled. This wine is a real crowd pleaser and a real value at like $13.75, $14 a bottle. All right, the Valpolicella Ripasso Superiore next, and this is a traditional classic Ripasso. Some people are drying the grapes, actually making it more Amarone-like, but this is where they just take the skins of the Amarone after they pressed it, and they pass the wine that's already been fermented, the Valpolicella, over them. So what this does is there's still some sugar and yeast in those skins they've just fermented. It re-ferments and goes through a secondary fermentation. Not like champagne, but champagne's one of the only other wines that goes through a secondary fermentation. Kicks the alcohol up a notch, makes the wine a little richer, but this wine had a very similar bouquet, that tart red cherry fruit, those nice, pretty floral highlights. And this one had some exotic kind of green tea aromas. This wine is aged for 18 months in large oak. That's very traditional. And on the palate, really lovely, smooth tannins, nice, rich cherry fruit, pretty floral notes, that nice hint of spice at the end. Excellent example of a Ripasso Valpolicella at $25. All right, the Amarone's up next, 2010 and 2011, and the last few vintages have been excellent for Amarone, 2007 and 6 in particular, and this 2010, a killer vintage. And they use a mix of barrels here with the Amarone, the second level of toasting, so a little lighter, heavier toast, and they use small barrique for a year, large barrique, Slavonian oak, rather, not barrique, for 2 years with the Amarone, the DOCG. And this has got a beautiful bouquet of red cherry fruit, a potpourri of flowers, herbs, light toasty, oaky, smoky notes, bitter cocoa, incense-like spice, really rich on the palate. When they dry those grapes, it polymerizes the tannins and makes them softer and smoother. You can drink Amarone on release because of this, and it doesn't have that bitter tannins at the end. Lovely tobacco spice, some dried meat and smoky notes at the end here. The 11 was another great vintage, and it's too early to see if it's going to be as good as 10, but to me, it had a little richer fruit, a little more forward, a little more drinkable. The only off vintage they've really had is 2002, where producers like Brigaldara made no Amarone at all in 2002. So this wine, really rich and ripe cherry fruit. Like I said, maybe a little bit richer than the 10, maybe not quite as much structure, really nice and sweet on the palate, round tannins, quite large in size, and had that lovely spice and nuance, just like the 2010 did, that little hint of green mint, that cocoa, the dried meat, and really excellent. I like both of these wines just as much, and you notice the price difference. That's because the 11 is half bottles. They don't have full bottles available yet. And then the Vecie. This is the old vineyard, and it's a different vineyard site. 450 meters up, and they were the first people to go over 300 meters in Valpolicella. Now there's people up at 650, so they only make 1,300 bottles of this wine. They started producing it in 2000, and, well, they don't make it every year, but in 2002 they make any Amarone, but they make it pretty much every year other than when they don't make Amarone. A little bit more Corvina in the blend here also. The most important wine, important grape in Amarone. And this wine spends 2 years in barrique, and then 2 years in large oak cask. Wonderful intensity here on the palate. Rich cherry liqueur-like fruit. Really compelling bouquet of flowers, exotic spices, and a little bit of that distinct kind of Play-Doh clay minerality that I get in some of these wines from Valpolicella, and even more nuance coming out on the second day. This is very, very big and chewy on the tongue. This wine's got a lot of rich fruit, a lot of tannins, a lot of that floral and spice quality coming through, and this one will age a few decades in your cellar. Most excellent juice at $83. And then the greatest wine made in Valpolicella, Recioto, the sweet wine, the sweet red wine, and this is a drier style of Recioto, if there is such a thing. Only 100 grams of sugar per liter, as opposed to what 120 would be closer to normal. And this wine's got an exotic bouquet, that cocoa, the dried meat, the tobacco, a little bit of volatile acidity and the note of like a balsamic kind of quality, but that blew off on the second day. Just incredibly rich and sweet on the tongue, a lovely velvet, silk-like texture, and then wonderful freshness. This wine's got great acidity and balance. Most producers will tell you Recioto, the greatest wine made in Valpolicella. Even if you don't like sweet wines, this wine has got the acidity. It finishes dry. Great with blue cheese, with savory dishes, bacon wrapped shrimp and stuff like that. Fantastic. Check it out, everything we've got from Brigaldara, and we got a lot of stuff in the store from these guys we didn't taste on this day. I'm your host, Andrew Lampasoni, signing off for the Wine Watch, saying remember, always drink the good stuff first.